Hello, my name is Marc Ruiz Evans, President of the Yes California Board of Directors Calexit campaign. If you've watched the news recently, you realize it is now time to ask uncomfortable questions that people would have ridiculed or suggested to never bring up before. A few months ago, more than a few months ago, the coronavirus hit California very hard. People were mad and scared, but they carried on, as if it were just another crisis like 911 or the drought epidemic or climate change. However, this time was different. Californians noticed that there was essentially zero guidance from the federal government on how to handle this unprecedented emergency. Reporters such as Steve Lopez, Dan Walters, and Tom Elias, all longtime experts in covering California government and its policies with decades of experience writing about the news on topics such as this, all said something remarkable during this time. Each one of these sober analysts who have lived through all of the calamities that California has faced over years suggested that maybe we should look into what it would take if we had to operate independently from the American government. Yes, they suggested that, and yes, that was only a few months ago. They have never said anything like this before, not during any of the myriad of existential crises California seems to face every decade. Dan Walters said, quote, "It raises not for the first time the question of whether California could or even should go it alone, evolving from a nation state into an independent nation, or more accurately, returning to its brief pre-statehood days." Steve Lopez said, "Newsom, if you haven't noticed, keeps calling us a nation state. Let's make it official." I agree with you, Steve Lopez. They are not alone in this sudden evolution in thought. In 2017, Governor Gavin Newsom slammed the idea of Calexit. Yet in 2020, at the same time as Walters, Elias, and Lopez, the governor also had a major change of heart and announced that California would ignore any federal guidance on reopening after the coronavirus and said California was a nation state while announcing that he would not listen to any federal guidance. He was loved for that, and Californians really supported that action. Joe Matthews, another longtime California policy reporter, has essentially said in the last few months that the idea of Calexit will never go away. It's an evergreen topic and will always be here. He was speaking about the fact that Calexit had an official commercial by a major Hollywood person. Gwyneth Paltrow, in the show The Politician, ran as a governor of California who talked for 5 minutes about why California should secede, literally stealing all of the Yes California talking points that we had espoused for a long time. We take that as flattery. Serious people can see the writing on the wall. America just doesn't function like it used to, and California is more and more having to deal with a reality where it is alone and can expect zero guidance from the federal government. That should not come as a shock. In December of last year, the director of the USC School of Communications, Professor Taplin, said that we can expect no guidance from the federal government, even if a progressive wins the White House. He made that statement before anyone ever heard of the coronavirus pandemic, a lack of federal guidance, or a conservative Supreme Court being enacted and ruling over California for the first time since the late 1970s. Even before Professor Taplin, other well-respected professors in foreign policy have made similar statements. Marcos Kounalakis of Stanford, Cal Rustaley of UCLA, Bridget Coggins of UC Santa Barbara, and Danny Savalas, the legal analyst for MSNBC, all said that California could survive independent from America, and they were not being foolish or half-hearted when they made those statements. Recently, we have seen many firsts in American history. We have never had a president in memory send federal troops in unmarked cars to arrest protesters or declare that he wouldn't follow a peaceful transfer of power. We've never had a federal government completely fail at providing guidance during an emergency. And we've never had a federal government completely fail at providing financial relief during an epidemic, which was the responsibility and complete and total fault of both the Democrats and the Republicans to not pass a bill in November and December and wait months to actually pass the exact same thing just months later. We have never watched an attempted coup to take over the United States Capitol. These failures are new, and they represent a new era of America, one where the nation just doesn't function as a government. We have never had a presidential candidate openly question what country is this, as Joe Biden did when he was running because he could not process the craziness he had seen. That was before the coup when he said that. This is a new era, and it's not like anything America's dealt with. America's had turbulence. This is a brand new trajectory. What happens if Trump doesn't win? But Californians continue to watch on TV America sink, and failures continue to happen and get bigger. Will Californians stay calm, or will they react like they did when the federal government failed to provide coronavirus direction? And they automatically said, let's just do it ourselves and completely ignore whatever the feds say and the rest of America wants. Should we wait to jump into emergency fix mode when we see a train wreck coming? Or would it be more reasonable, given we are the world's 5th largest economy, that we actually plan ahead for how to make a strategically smart separation if we ever had to, if that came to be? Is it better to sit on a ship that's sinking, wall the waters raising up to your waist, and then discuss the idea of even constructing a lifeboat? Or is that the dumbest thing people in an emergency situation could do? And they are risking their families' lives by doing that. Serious people are suggesting that now is the time to have a conversation about Calexit, even if you don't like the idea. Do you wait until the ship is sinking into the ocean to start designing a lifeboat, or do you build that lifeboat before you ever sail? We are no longer asking people who want to work with us to support Calexit. Rather, we are asking people, and being intolerant if they cannot meet these conditions, that they must believe it is now unreasonable to not think that it is reasonable to have this conversation. If after everything you're seeing, you think that it's crazy to talk about what if California has to become independent, you are the crazy one. You do not have to believe that Calexit's the best solution or is a solution, but you do have to have the sense of you to recognize that Californians, it is now time to have a conversation about what if we have to go alone. If you're willing to believe that now is time and that it is reasonable to have this conversation, you are welcome to Yes California. Yes California made this strategic move a few weeks ago to move away from saying you must support Calexit to saying you must believe it is now unreasonable to not talk about this, given everything you've seen. Changing the metrics for who we reach out to and work with, because we believe that now is the time to have this conversation, and everybody sees that. Yesterday, within weeks of our strategic redirection, we have now seen that it is reasonable to have this conversation, and as endorsed by a very famous person. I'm having a little bit of trouble explaining this because I'm very excited. So this morning, I was informed that Nate Silver of FiveThirtyEight, one of the top experts and most respected analysts of American politics anywhere, on his own podcast show, which is having conversations about politics at the highest levels, he interjected a conversation and said, let's talk about an America where some of the states leave, and literally said, what if California were to say, we're tired of being run by a minoritarian Republican Party, and they decided to leave? Nate Silver, super respected for his discussions on politics, seen as very rational, said yesterday that it is now reasonable for people at the highest levels of political talk to entertain the idea that maybe California will secede. We find this significant because this came within weeks, not months, after Yes California said the exact same thing. If after all the examples I've listed, you still don't believe it's reasonable to have this conversation, there's nothing available for you to convince you. But if you can see the writing on the wall, and if you can recognize who Nate Silver is, and that he, along with many other intelligent policy analysts, have now said now is the time to have this conversation, then please consider joining us at Yes California.